So welcome everyone. This is the webinar on navigating the layoff era, ways for product managers to pivot and prosper. Today we are joined by Damien Peters, longtime friend of mine who I got a chance to meet before he went to MIT to get his MBA from Sloan and before he went to Silicon Valley and greatness at Zynga and Meta and Facebook and then on to do several startups after that. Damien and I got a chance to build systems together. He was always a wonderful thinker and a great team member, and he continued to grow and become a coach for many people who are in product management, helping them advance their careers, win the product manager job by getting through product manager interviews, which is a really important skill. And he continued after his time at Silicon Valley to become head of product at two startups, Savvy Wealth and Chameleon. He drove that company and their product strategy and built a product culture there. He also founded Wealth Noir, a financial media startup, and led it through its acquisition to Savvy Wealth. And of course, he brings his passion for product management to his work at the University of Maryland, and to all that he does. But we're really proud to have him as one of our adjunct faculty who teaches our fundamentals of product management in the Masters of Professional Studies in Product Management that we offer here at College Park. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Damien. Damien, thanks so much for offering to do this.
Thanks again for having me. As always, it's a dream to work back at my alma mater, and also thanks for some time to talk about something that I find personally just really interesting, and hopefully you will find like really impactful for kind of your career, kind of how you're thinking about product management. So, want to get started actually with a little bit of story, like my personal layoff story. I like to be transparent and overshare when I can. But back in 2013, so well before Meta even was called Meta, and things along those lines, I worked at a startup called TinyCo. TinyCo was backed by Andreessen Horowitz. So right after grad school, I turned down my internship return offer. I wanted the small, scrappy 150-person startup. Got some stock options, which was my focus, and I kind of came and started getting to work. And work I did. The CEO left the office around 11 p.m. every night. Mostly the PMs were there until late. I used to see my wife in the morning as she woke up as I was sleeping in to then go to work later than her. So, but I had a bunch of stock options. That's what you do when you join a startup. Until 5 days before my 1 year period. So, uh, both my 1 year anniversary and my 30th birthday were approaching at the same time. In celebration of both, I found out that no one at the office had been to the club and had popped bottles. So I organized an outing to take everyone out there to celebrate my birthday and then 1 year anniversary. 1 year anniversary is where you get your first equity grant. So the equity vests and becomes yours. About 5 days before both of these events, I was laid off. Um, I it was the company had a down round, so we raised capital at a lower valuation. The layoff made TechCrunch kind of win the team when the company had it, uh, and I wasn't expecting it. Even when they announced layoffs that morning, I thought I went out to go get lunch with somebody, so it kind of hit me out of nowhere. Luckily for me, everything worked out. So basically, because of that layoff, I ended up moving to Facebook, and it wouldn't have happened without it. I was actually not in love with gaming at the time, so I was kind of already looking to leave. I got a chance to do some product management consulting, which has been a staple in terms of my career and kind of what I do now. So I know people always say like, oh, this layoff is really a blessing or things like that. But I will say, from when I started at TinyCo to 2 years later, I had tripled my more than tripled actually my total compensation. So I was my role at TinyCo was my first six-figure role, and I was amazed to see kind of what I was able to do leaving there. So a little bit about me in terms of my random background and why I might have any reason to be able to talk about this. So as John mentioned, Booz Allen Hamilton was my first real job. I had actually interned at Microsoft in the mobile devices division back in 2004, kind of what a time, and then IBM before that. After Booz Allen, government was cool, was a little slow. I went to MIT to get my MBA, and that's where I discovered product management. I did an internship at Zynga, so if anyone knows Farmville or Cityville, but I personally worked on Zynga Poker, and then as I mentioned, I went to TinyCo. We all know how the Tiny Co story ended, but that allowed me, there's a little bit of consulting. I think it was like a 4 month gap in between, to then get a job at what is now called Meta. I will always call it Facebook. I was hired and left Facebook. I worked at Facebook. Um, where I did machine learning, back when it was still called machine learning and not AI. After around 3 years, my wife became pregnant, which was great, and she told me I worked too much, so I quit and started a startup because somehow that would give me more free time. But in addition to that, I worked at a nonprofit. I then kind of had a very classical burnout, and I moved to Spain for 2 years, of all things. Moved to Valencia, Spain, with the aim to work on my startup remotely, to grow it kind of like more organically, and to drink a bunch of wine and live by the beach. Um, what I found is after about 400 days of wine, beaches, and clubs, I got bored, and so I became the chief product officer of a company at the time called Vitcord, now called Chameleon. We actually pivoted the company through the pandemic from a social media video app to essentially, I think, Slack, but all video. So in a remote era. Then moved back to the US right in the height of COVID and joined the City Ventures team as an entrepreneur in residence. I really wanted to get into finance and fintech. Wealth and Wide really whet my appetite. And I was really interested in venture capital too. It was a very interesting role working on corporate innovation, a large um, company, and kind of what product management meant to a bank like Citi versus what it meant to me. And one thing that was always weird is they kept saying fintech as opposed to financial services, like two separate industries, which coming from tech, I'm like, it's all finance, right? Anyways, after in 2022, I got a DM on LinkedIn, which we'll talk about personal branding, that led to Wealth More getting acquired by Savvy Wealth. They were looking for a head of product. I really liked where they were going to take the company, and I thought it would be the ultimate way to get Wealth More where I wanted it to be. But what I found out is that I didn't love having a manager, or working for someone as much as I did for myself, which I should have known at City Time. So I left there after around 7 months and took around a year and a half to figure out what was next in life. Have some real estate, commercial real estate, some domestic and international real estate investments that I did. Have some properties that I manage here. Kind of try to figure out what's next, and where I've landed is, in addition to teaching at Maryland, formerly also at Colorado, I now also work with MLT, the Manager Leadership for Tomorrow. It's a racial equity nonprofit, as their startup ecosystem advisor, and also WNCP.AI, where we do AI and strategy consulting. Let's start by kind of just aligning on product management, because people are in the different stages. A lot of what I'm going to say applies to almost anyone in tech, and broadly anyone in one of these industries that are kind of getting impacted, but this is really tailored towards product managers. So product managers represent the user and they lead a product team. What that a product team typically has a product like the Facebook like button, or messages on Facebook, or events on Facebook, or search on Google. These teams are usually cross-disciplinary, so there's typically engineering, design, things along those lines. And the team typically does not directly report into you, but you are responsible for figuring out the vision of the team, aligning all of the people and everything that needs to happen, and getting them in the right order. One small housekeeping tip, thing I forgot to mention, is that product management, when people say PM, that means product management. I know there's some project managers here. I spoke at the symposium recently, but PM stands for product management. If you want to put a J in there, it can be PJM, but I'm a product manager, so you'll hear me say PM. If you ever hear me say PM, I'm talking about product. But anyways, many product managers work with software technology, but this is not a requirement. It's not always. There's a lot of hardware and non-technical products. Period. And then one key thing that I think is just important as we talk about this and as you approach your career is that product managers are not requirements. They are expendable. You need an engineer to build the product or design it. You need manufacturing. You may need a designer. Um, Even analytics, you can argue, but a PM does nothing that is required, but they are additive and a multiplicative factor. So your goal is to really come in, be in service of the people that you're working with, but things should be a force, a multiplicative factor better with you and your ability there. So when I say PM, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Now, I've been product manager. First time was back in 2011, actually, for the internship, but really in 2012. So I've been in it a little over a decade. It's been interesting to see what's happened. And there's kind of like three phases that I really think about it. So early on, it was kind of this era of it was new. Like PM wasn't as popular. My mom truly didn't understand what I did. A lot of my friends didn't either. But this is the birth of where we had some of these big, like FANG. For those who don't know, is Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. We can argue about which the name of companies, but basically just refers to big tech, where you see the super high compensations. The walking desk. Free business class. So back then, it was this growth period, especially in Silicon Valley. New York was coming up, but the product was it was new. There weren't any books, there weren't any PM influencers, there weren't YouTube videos, there weren't boot camps. None of that existed. When I wanted to become a product manager, I stumbled across it in business school, and that's how I kind of came into it. And then we get into the roaring 2010s. And when I say roarings, triple money bags. You see 1 to 2 years makes you a senior PM. After 1 year and one internship, I was a senior PM at Facebook. Compensations got wild. I'd say 300, 200 to 300 would be a great starting salary. For example, if you interned at Facebook and you came back, it was a 100K signing bonus. It was a really great time for product management. Also, this is where the formalization of product management, books started to come out, boot camps came out, people outside of industry, almost all of my business school friends started to become either go into tech or become product managers. Um, it was a great time. And now, fast forward to 2025, and I'll talk about how we've gotten here, but I'd say what I like to say is we're in the layoff era. It's temporary, it's not going to be forever, but this is a part of the maturation of this market, because the truth is you can't keep giving everyone 100K bonuses indefinitely. So back in the day, to double down on it, in this kind of boom time, you saw this high demand, high pay. uh, I had a phone interview scheduled the day I got laid off. I think we went out for drinks, and I think I had gotten one before then. The Facebook recruiter had pinged me before even I had gotten laid off and did not care that I had been laid off. I was like, great, that means you're available. Hyper title growth. 3 years, you'd be a director. And when I talk about compensation with these title growths, it was a common thing for Uber to offer Facebook PMs, junior PMs, to switch over around 1.2 to $2.1 million just in stock and equity. They're a private company. It's not guaranteed, but you have to understand some of the absurdities, at least for me, and me at that age and time. um, you can layoffs only happen if the company went under, if the down round or something like that. And this is primarily just tech. And when I say tech too, it's like tech in the Bay Area in New York. I in the DC area, had interviewed at Capital One while I was at Facebook because my wife was pregnant and was looking to move to DC. And I remember having a discussion with the hiring manager, and he kind of alluded to, like, do you really make that much out there at this age? And I was like, yes. And that is why, and so I found that salaries, compensations, expectations, skill sets, things along those, like, very different highly back then. And especially once you moved out of tech. And then also everything was new back then, right? There's like 85 different books, LinkedIn learning courses, masters that you can get if you want to become a product manager, and none of that existed. Each company, the name wasn't even standardized. At Apple, they were product marketing managers. At Google, sorry, at Microsoft, they were program managers. It varied highly, but the point is, if you had the skills, if you had any level of experience, if you just had an interest and wanted to switch into it, it was a great time. Fast forward to 2025. It's not like that anymore. It's not bad, but it's not like that. Right now, the layoff era, we've seen a real quick, rapid cooling down of the product management and general tech market starting around 2022. I'll go through a timeline in a second. But what we're seeing is job requirement inflation. Talk to anyone, look on LinkedIn, look on YouTube. People are complaining that there are no more junior roles. Roles are asking for long experience, and whatever they're asking for, there's some ex Google, ex Uber, ex PM who hangs out with Mark Zuckerberg on the weekend that is also applying for this role. And that's because there were so many layoffs at so many of these companies that we saw a large amount of experienced PMs come back into the market. Industry maturation expansion. So PM is now not just in tech. We're seeing it in banking and government and military. I met someone, one of my class. Someone in my class was a product manager for the Army, and he actually ended up moving to private sector. It was amazing hearing the kind of difference, but it's in high demand still. It's just that there are a lot more PMs in the market, and there's a lot of fresh PMs. So I will say, uh, those who are a bit more grizzlied can kind of stand out because there were so few PMs back then. There's very few people who will be in the industry kind of like 10 years plus. And then last two is just AI impact. I mean, we can't deny that. It both has changed the requirement and needs, especially for middle managers. I think the general sense is that middle management is less interest. Now, um, each manager can handle more people with the benefit of AI, and also direct skills in IC are more desired now. But separately, too, we're seeing that companies want product managers who can use AI. They don't want someone who's like, I'm afraid of ChatGPT. If you're not using ChatGPT to write your PRDs and to improve, you are already behind. And it's just like when my mom stopped being a nurse because they brought in iPads. This is an industry. If you want to stay in the top companies, if you want to stay mobile, you need to keep your skills and understand what the market is demanding. Let's walk through a little timeline of how we got into this layoff era. So first, it started with COVID, which big tech loved. I mean, you could get a remote role because every company suddenly was remote role. Like even for me coming from Spain and things like that, you could work wherever you wanted to. Um, Everyone was on online. Everyone was buying everything from Amazon. Facebook metrics were through the roof, so they had money to burn. Um, Salaries went up. Amazon grew by 50%, Microsoft 30%. I think Facebook was like 80 or 90% growth. And this all came to a head around 2022. And this is the start of the layoff era and how we got here. And it started with two people, good old Elon and Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. So first, Mark uh, announced a layoff of 11,000 employees at Facebook. This is around 13%. This is unheard of in tech, unless again drastic market. Even in that case, you would probably just sell the company before you go and lay off people because uh, layoffs were negative. Companies would pay people not to work just so they couldn't work at competitors. If anyone's watched Silicon Valley, it's very real. Um, Rest invest. So them announcing layoffs was just like weird. It it was like something that never happened. So I didn't know that China could release an AI that didn't require $1 billion of training. And so it was eye opening. And then secondly, when Elon Musk acquired Twitter, he cuts 40% of the workforce. There was a lot of private backdoors debates, actually not even just private backdoors, over whether Twitter would crumble. Basically, you can't fire 40% of the staff. There was all these comments about like the reliability engineers, the site will go down, and it didn't. So the story I've heard is that there were secret signal groups with billionaires in it and CEOs saying like, wow, Mark and Elon just they changed the game. They made it okay to fire people. And that hit a peak in 2023 very quickly to where 250,000 tech workers were laid off, according to Layoffs at FYI. A great resource too if you want to go learn more about that. Who was laid off, what companies too. And even to recent, this month, Meta and Microsoft have both announced performance-related layoffs. So this is to say that they're just like, look, we just think we just want to get rid of some of the low performers. Um, Again, this is really new territory for the tech sector, and so this is why this signals and defines what is the layoff era. This change. So the layoff era, what does that look like? 264,000 layoffs in 2022, 2023. It dropped only 152,000 in 2024, and we had about 5,200 so far in 2025. So the point is that layoffs and a soft or tight job market are realities that were not the case, at least when I was started being a product manager. Again, multiple companies offers. One reason my LinkedIn profile is kind of restricted is because I got too many unsolicited requests for so long, and I've just never felt the need to open it fully back up to anyone without my email. This is what today looks like. It is not the same boom go bust of the roaring 2010s. And there are a couple key components that I think really highlight the layoff era. This is again focused on product management, but does have a lot of applications outside of just that. One again is the high levels of competition. So A lot of people move into the tech industry and specifically into tech. There are literally YouTube influencers explaining that you could become a PM without any experience and earn $500,000. Very attractive offer. A lot of those people are now new and 1 to 3 years, maybe 5 years experience, and may have been let go. So there's a lot more competition for those roles. There's a lot of demand. So overall, tech's unemployment is still low, still below average. Most people do get jobs, even if they get laid off. They may get in a different industry, but the truth is, the top jobs have way more competition. Generalists just ain't it. It used to be that being a PM, you're a jack of all trades. I can do a little bit of everything. No, there's a move to skills, experience, specific focused areas because there are a lot of generalists. If you think about people going through boot camps, degree programs, they'll come into the market typically as a generalist. So, one, if you're already a PM, look at I'll talk about this in a little bit, but look at what you've done. And if you're not going into it, look at the industry and your background experience. If you were in finance, if you were in pharma, health tech, ed tech, think about that as you think about your path. AI is growing fast and still offers some great opportunities for those who can get the skills, are willing to put in the time. It's a way to stand out. It's a high growth area, and it's an area where we're still seeing more demand than there is capability. And funny enough, I am super geeked out hardcore into AI. It's what my company does now. It is not pervasive. I talking to a friend out in the Bay. He said 25% of people are really, really thinking about AI. So don't think that like every tech company and every person in tech is already on it. They are not. Now it's a lot more of who you know or who knows you. So personal references are almost a requirement. Everyone who I've talked to who's had a short job period did through a personal reference. And online applications are just trash. Basically, look at LinkedIn. You can see the number of people that apply. AI has made it really easy to apply. It's made it really easy to screen. It is really hard to stand out. And you still need to do it. Unfortunately, it is still a source. It still does get your name out there and things like that. But it means that you now need to work twice as hard to get kind of the same results out of online applications. So making it through the layoff era, here's kind of how what I propose and how I like to think about it. One is get strategic, right? Develop a career strategy before you could kind of just stumble into PM and like, yeah, I'd read some books here and there. Now I'm very strategic about the skills, the areas, projects that I'm building, um, because it matters now. We're now into a competitive market. Skill enhancement. So one, I believe you always need to be learning, and it's triply so for product management, just because of the nature of the work. Now is a time where there are in-demand skills. I mentioned AI, data analytics, data analysis, data science, even having more of a design background. There's a great talk by someone. She just would talk about how product management is dead. It basically talks about because of all the AI tools, we now should be able to design, do a little bit of coding and everything. So traditional of just let me think about the product and tell people, not so much. You need to be bringing new skills to the game to stay competitive, especially because there were so many recent product managers who have relatively low or generalist skill. Network building, as I mentioned before, everyone who I've talked to who's gotten a quick who's been laid off or been impacted is a cute word that we tend to use, um, uh, personal networks. So that means not just when you get laid off, but having friends, going out for networking events, talking to people, being a nice person. That all sounds good, but these things are important, and they matter now more. And then last is personal branding. So we're in a highly digital world where, especially now, someone can kind of like whisper your name and AI can essentially scour the internet. If anyone's ever seen Clay, this kind of AI data aggregation platform, you'll see what type of stuff can do. I saw it back at Facebook many years ago, so it's just gotten easier and more accessible. Um, but that's these are the things that if you can focus on and think about will really help you get through the layoff era. And I call this an era because I think the active layoffs will kind of slow down, subside. But what we will see is again, we'll see a normalization of the market. We'll see certain skills kind of stand out, and there won't be the case of what we saw back in the roaring 2010s. And just put an example and use a comparable. If you studied finance and hopped out of school and went onto Wall Street as a trader back in the 80s, you could buy a Lamborghini. You'd go out, the bonuses, you'd be making the equivalent in today's dollars of around like 250K, 150 to like 200, 300K with a 100K bonus on top. After 87 and the crash, that went away. It is not sustainable typically because what happens, and this is not to nerd out, but economics is the invisible hand of a market. But the supply, when something is that lucrative, more people will come into it. There will be more supply. The market will adjust. People will be attracted to do that until there's enough people where there's more of a match, and so suddenly employers can be a bit more picky and choosy. So similarly, great area to be in finance, just like tech still is, but there was a cooling down period. There was a period where it was really bad. And luckily tech doesn't seem to be as bad, but we are in the layoff era and you should think about it. All right, cool. That's me being a professor. I'll tackle all theory. Here's some dates and things like that. Practically, okay. What are you doing um, to get through this? Right? You have maybe kids to feed like me, or a house, or a mortgage, or something. So how are we going to survive through this? One, as I mentioned before, niche down, get specific. The day of the generalist PM, I just understand the customer. I can speak to use customer. That was cute back in 2015, um, and hot back in 2021 when we needed PMs for everything. Now, no. Um, if you're already in product, identify areas that you have expertise in. Growth has always been a extremely popular area. Ad tech and ad advertising, AI, of course. But look where you have skills. If there's industry specifically, fintech, finance, crypto, data analyst, data science. Develop more expertise in that area. That could be through your current job, whether you are a PM or not, just finding more expertise, more opportunities in that area. It could be hacking on your friend's startup who does something like that. And honestly, with AI, you can build almost anything. So you can just build a project, put it on your LinkedIn. And that gets me to the third point of showing evidence. You can develop the expertise and identify niches. And back in the day, potentially you'd be granted an interview if you could breathe and weren't stupid. So you could be able to talk that. Now you need to be able to show that digitally and before to even get the interview. So really think about, and there are many ways, can't even list them all, but like I said, build a website, start talking about it on a newsletter, start talking about it on LinkedIn, go to a friend's company. There are multiple ways to show evidence, but you want to be able to show evidence so that the AI and the machines can pick that up from you. Master your personal brand. So both in the world of AI, where again you can whisper someone's name and pull up their entire life's history, it's really important that you are looking good. I'm not sure if he's here. Shout out if you are, but I was meeting with someone just a week or two ago, and the first thing I said, I was like, "Can I be honest with you?" And he's like, "Sure." And I was like, "Your profile's trash." I was like, "You have really amazing experience in talking to you." He'd been at Google for several years, and I was like, "The word product doesn't appear anywhere on your LinkedIn profile, so you need to be doing this stuff. Optimize your LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn just by hands down is the resume of today. Optimize your resume, but optimize your LinkedIn profile more so. Engage regularly. Um, if you're not comfortable doing webinars like this or putting up social media, just comment on other people's posts, reshare stuff that is of interest, let people know how the job search is going, stuff like that. Just be genuine. Speak your mind. On LinkedIn, on X, on wherever it is. But the more that you can talk, it just allows your personal SEO, the last point, to work. Google yourself. For years, there was a boxer named Damien Peters, along with a homicidal. He killed his ex lover when he stabbed him, I think, in the knife, Damien Peters. And for years, I had to fight them for my personal SEO. And luckily, I think I'm pretty high up now. But this matters. I had Uber send me a comment on my personal blog. I bought DamienPeters.com years ago. It's not there anymore. It's the Pragmatic Peters, if you're interested. But anyways, and they wrote me a comment to offer me a product management role. They were looking for PMs. And so people kind of take for granted some of this stuff, but it really does matter. Stay ready. All right. After getting laid off all of a sudden and being 100% convinced that I could never be laid off, I took certain precautions every single time, just to make sure that if I did, I wouldn't feel completely lost. Keep your resume updated every 6 months, a year. Take a look at it, put new stuff down, kind of go through, think about your experience. Check the market, go out, try and get an interview, talk to some friends, have some coffee chats. Go to some events. What are the skills that are being that are important? Because your resume, I didn't call myself a machine learning PM for a long time. I talked about being working on location and places at Facebook because machine learning wasn't a highly desirable skill. It is now, and so the exact same work that I did is spoken about differently using different words based on the market. Know your worth. Going back to going out and get interviews, levels.fyi, levels, levels.fyi is a great resource, an insider. Glassdoor is another one, but Levels is a cute startup one, especially for tech. That's where you get um, insider industry. That's how I know that, for example, director of Google pays between around 800,000 to 1.2 million in total compensation. Understanding and knowing that someone is making over $1 million in your industry is really important information when you're looking for when you're discussing your next role or what you want to do or your promotion or salary at work. Emergency fund, won't go into it. Was in finance for a long time. A lot of financial literacy. Just keep some money on the side because you don't want to be freaking out. Unemployment kind of sucks for the most part, and document your wins. So one thing that even I'm at times need to do a better job of, but definitely while you're working, is to make sure to constantly just be thinking about things that you're doing really well. Jot them down somewhere. You don't need to publish them publicly because you may just sound like you're bragging all the time. But document these wins because you want to be able to talk to them if you're ever find yourself pitching someone or if someone just has an opportunity that may come up. All right, now some tactics. If you are actively looking for a job, you should not be by yourself for lunch any day of the week if possible, um, or close to it. You need to be out in the streets because now in the layoff era, it is who you know or who knows you. Um, Someone told me that they waited until they saw a job posted online for a company before reaching out to their friend at that company. And I was like, that friend already has four people that they already talked to that they're already thinking about. You now need to squeeze in, unless you are God given, handcrafted for that role, you're not going to be able to stand out. So talk to your friends, go out to some meetups, be genuine, just be proactive. Uh, Spend time getting to know others and having other people get to know you. And the last one, number 5, is a bit of a hot take, but unemployment is 100% a choice. No one here who is unemployed um, through any means that is not their own. And the reason I say that is because if you are unemployed, if someone lays you off, your job from the second you leave the office, I take that back. I actually suggest take a little time off. I'll talk about it in a second. But from the second you say, I want a job, you have a 80-hour a week job. You may have been working 40 hours. You now have an 80-hour a week job, which is to find that new job. 5 coffee chats a week. 10 honestly is going to be best. You can do them on Zoom. You can do like 5 of them in a day. If you don't have a job, what else are you doing? But you need to be talking to people, understanding who's hiring, what they're hiring for, what people are saying. One physical local event. It can be an online webinar, but per week, get out into your area. It's easier in some cities than others. But think about it, one product conference a quarter, product or tech conference. So go out to a place. This is all non-trivial amount of money. Well, the product conference is more so, but there are ways around this. Some scholarships and things along those lines. But the truth is, if you want a job, and especially if you want these high comp numbers that you hear about, you need to be out there. And you need to actively work. And then 100% of the time period, you need to be learning. There's a million free certifications now between AI, LLMs, ChatGPT, prompt engineering, boot camps that you can do, coaching, interview coaching. I'm on 2 platforms where I help do mock interviews and things like that. I had a career coach when I came back from Spain who specifically worked for people who were coming off of sabbaticals. She helped me. How do I ask people to talk? How do I position my sabbatical or time off? Was I doing nothing in Spain? Was I actively working? So you always need to be learning. You always need to be doing things that you can actually do. And actually, as John pointed out, if you have the ability to speak, people will give you reduced fees, will ask you, people at some point may start paying you. And honestly, if you're looking for work, speaking in front of a large group of product managers is a pretty good way. It's going to be a little bit more effective, I think, than LinkedIn. Bonus one, number 6, breathe and stay calm. I naturally just deal with stress well. I think it's because I've always stressed myself out since I was a baby. But what that means is that I took, I think, a month and a half off when I first got laid off. Like I had a job, I had a two interviews set up, and then I ended up getting a job offer within like 2 or 3 weeks. Um, and ended up turning them down, which was good because Facebook. But I took some time. I actually flew to New York. I went and caught up with some old friends. Going back to that networking, it was time to kind of decompress and really think about the next move. A lot of times, I see people immediately freak out, rush, take the next job. And for example, had I done that, I would have ended up at a smaller 30-person gaming company that I can't even remember the game, because that was the first offer I got, and then it was a ad company tied to AOL. But I knew I wanted something a little bit better. I had some savings lined up, things along those lines, so I was able to wait. And also, too, I just want to be clear. At the time when I was waiting, I had just finished grad school, just gotten married, just moved to California, so had tons of student debt for the first time in life. It was not an easy time. I was not coasting and chilling. I had a rental property that was losing me a ton of money, but I still made a point to calm and chill. Couple honorable mentions that didn't make the list, but things. RTO is real. I keep hearing people talk about they're gonna get this great remote role and it's gonna be remote and they're gonna or I'm or someone I mentioned actually, or if he's here too, but who has an RTO order, return to office, and is thinking about moving to a new company. I told him you need to move to a new house. The truth is, with the current administration, what's going on in the government, I'm here in DC, but it's already started beforehand, and we're seeing how these large companies and tech companies are very complacent, very happy with the current administration. So um, they don't like RTO for the most part. You're going to see a reduction. There are still roles. There still will be remote roles. There was remote roles before, but don't think that it's going to be this panacea. So if you're hardcore looking, think about where you are and what that means. Stat that actually was talked about someone in commercial office real estate. When I heard of this, LinkedIn jobs went from 20% remote listings around 20, I think they said 2021 was the peak. And it's now down to 8%. Um, and that's before the government required everyone to come back in yesterday. Consider a pivot. I'm not a PM anymore. I really love what I do now. Sometimes it's just not worth the BS. I love product. I love finding out the users. Office politics are just not my jam. Even working on a startup can be less so, but I'm just really excited about what I work on right now. Learn to negotiate total comp. This is something that's really important in general. This is a way to help prepare yourself in the layoff era. Since your next job, you may get laid off. There are terms you can put in your offer letter. For example, once I learned that a company could lay me off and get rid of all of my equity. And by the way, I had 4x the equity that a close friend of mine had. I knew I had a ton of options because the only thing I had negotiated. But what I didn't negotiate was a clause, which I do now, is that if I am terminated for reasons that are not my own, I want a vest, right? If you made a bad hiring decision at this point, right? Because if you're fired within 3 months, you could be terrible, but realistically, they probably should have known that you weren't going to be a good fit. Um, and it was someone at Citibank who helped me understand this. But the point is, learn how to negotiate your comp, understand equity versus the cash portion versus bonuses, when stuff's going to hit, because it's really important. And then last thing is just optimize for impact every day. Whether you're every day searching for a job, whether you're still at a job, think about what's the most impactful thing that you could be doing, what's the most important, what's the most useful to your direct manager, the people around you, and do that. Period. That is by far the best advice for anyone in their career. Focus on impact, understand how impact works with your organization, something that took me so many years to understand. What my work leads into, who cares about it and why, and optimize for that. On that note, PM is still hot stuff. We're still seeing growth in the area. There's still a lot of jobs because entire companies are moving their entire BA departments to become PMs. They're hiring PM coaches. They're trying to train into this. So the industry is exploding. And then secondly, non-product led companies are now obsessed and thinking about the user. Service-based companies like McKinsey and Charles Schwab want to understand how their service-based clients perceive their needs. And so salaries also are continuing to grow. And then again, a lot of opportunities with AI. So there are definitely areas of rapid, still kind of crazy growth for those who are into it. On that note, I want to end, and I'm going to pass it over to John in a second. But just wanted to give a little shout out to my company. Also, for anyone that's interested, you can use this QR code here, or we just dropped a link in the chat. But if you want to get the slides, so all these slides were generated using an AI platform called Gamma. I'm actually will send a link to the platform. Also, we generated, as I was doing my research, I looked at around 50 different articles, papers, and then also was able to compile an AI podcast. It was really good for me, kind of like listening, putting together some of my initial thoughts. So you'll get that. And then lastly, we're working on this interview AI coach chatbot, more of a proof of concept, but you get early access. So I do AI marketing strategy. I really love thinking about making marketing more compelling using AI or novel approaches, consider like an AI influencer. And then executive education. I like teaching. I find a lot of people don't understand product and they don't understand AI. We particularly love working with nonprofits and startups. But on that note, I want to hand it back over to John. Um,
Thank you, Damien. Uh, Fantastic ideas. I love that you use AI to generate a podcast to listen to drive more thoughts about this. And this is just amazingly packed with really digestible ideas about how to navigate this time and to be successful. Period. Just fantastic. Really great. We have a couple of questions that I've queued up here, and as you are thinking about those questions, I just want to also give a word to our sponsors for the Masters of Professional Studies in Product Management, where you can learn more from Damien, who is our fantastic instructor for the fundamentals course. Many people have been through our program already. They've graduated and they've gotten a lot out of it. From Faith DeFreitas, who is already a director of product, to those who are starting their careers, like Lee Jang and Cassandra Fazio. They have been they all give their praise for the experience. It is a very fast part-time master's degree, 15 months, 100% online, very flexible. You start off learning from Damien, as well as from others in terms of the fundamentals of product and innovation, and then grow from there into discovery, delivery, marketing, and finance at scale. To get in, you just need a 4-year degree from an accredited institution and a 3.0 GPA. We can work with you if you're a little under that. So don't think that there's major barriers. It's more so about your passion and willingness. So you'll provide us a statement of purpose, transcript, and you are not required for any kind of scores, GMAT, GRE. And the degree is very affordable, only 26K, and you can pay in installments, which makes it less than a quarter of an MBA, and very applied, just like this webinar was. So back to our conversation. The first question was about the 4 steps. You had personal branding, networking. The question came in asking, is there an order to this? Do you suggest starting with 1, then 2, then 3, then 4? Or is this something that you kind of got to do all at once? Given the ordering and the organization, just curious about where do you suggest people focus first?
yeah. So the only particular order I would say is to start with planning, in the sense that that typically is going to start. What job do you want? How are you going to approach it? Are you trying to get, director of Google? Or are you trying to get your, target internal IT? Outside of that, they're ranked in terms of, I'd say, the importance, right? So it's not that one, you may have a ton of skills already, so therefore you can kind of skip the step. Maybe in your industry, it's actually really all networking. But the point though is that I think skills right now are number one, what's in demand and what will help you differentiate. The second part is network building. Again, when I talk to people, those who get really quick turnarounds, it's because of a personal relationship. But if you have no good skills, it doesn't help just for you to know people. And then lastly is personal branding. So personal branding, is less of the least of the requirement. At minimum, you should be Googleable and have a good LinkedIn. But I find if you do all of these things, that's where people really stand out.
That makes sense. And I think what you're showing there is that once you're able to set that up, you're going to be routinely personally branding, and then right on a regular basis, and it builds up from there. Um, Another big question was, what was it like? And so this is a little bit more for you and your experience as a product manager in the early days, especially over at Facebook. Um, what was it like working in that environment? And what was it like to be under that type of an agile leadership?
Yes. So, it was like super agile. It's like hyper agile almost, right? So nothing was written down, even to the point where at other tech companies, it was like they don't write anything down. It's weird. Um, so everything was kind of like social and socially, you want to understand what your team did. You go and talk to the rest of the team and a bunch of other PMs. You have all these meetings. So one reason for that is because the belief was as soon as you write it down, it's already deprecated. Even the engineers did not put code in comments in their code. They were told not to. They said it was a waste of time. Um, and a lot of organizations like it took me a while to kind of get used to that. I was like, well, shouldn't we at least maybe think a little bit further out? It's like, no, because we'll be dead. So it was really it really kept you on your toes. It really helped you understand how to iterate super, super quickly. And also too, there's this like overt belief and requirement that you need to be finding impact, as I kind of mentioned, right? So part of agile is like the value that you're delivering to the customer. And it was the premises, especially as a PM, that you will shut down your own product. And we will celebrate that because you made the right call. They also traditionally understaffed the product management organization. So if they needed 200 PMs, there would be like 180. And the reason is because it forced every product manager to find the place of most impact within the company. So fundamentally, it was designed so that you can move within roles. Your manager was rated on their ability to help you find another team and better impact if that was the case. So everything was fundamentally aligned on moving as quickly as possible. And if you believed that Mark Zuckerberg was making a bad decision, there was a forum every Friday where you could ask him, and people would constantly. Don't you think WhatsApp was way too much money to pay for that? Let me explain to you why. Dishwasher, like, yeah, and he believed in transparency. And so those were some of the aspects I think of like learning under that time. But it was somewhat intoxicating. Once you get used to it, just everything feels like slow.
Yeah. Uh, uh, Pretty remarkable. I can only imagine what, yeah, you think that culture still exists at Facebook today?
So it's one of those things. Mark, and I say Mark because he really did just would walk around as very he would say these things himself. What he would say is that all companies suck. And he's like, the problem that people run into is that you can only choose the thing not to suck at. So, like, everyone's got to get up and go to work, something, but you can all be, agile, narrative, or like, so I know they try very, very hard to not suck at certain things and to keep things. But for example, the old model was move fast, break things.
Yeah.
Then an intern took down the internet. So there was a point in time where every single web page that had a like button on it was broken for it was around 8 hours. It made like CNN. It was a huge big deal. It was like my first week at the company. They changed the motto after that, right? So like there's certain things they acknowledge that when you suddenly have like $1 trillion of market cap and like 3 billion people on the platform, you can't go around playing around with running tests on people's emotions on post quality and just assume no one's going to notice or care. Or Cambridge Analytica, right? Like these are real things now.
The value is not only in the future, it's also what we have built today, and that changes that. Yeah. We've got another question here from Astrid, which is, I've been in my current role for 3 years. I would like to start looking for new opportunities, but I'm concerned about the current job market and how a new administration may impact it. And also, does it look bad to stay in one position for too long? What is a good time frame to stay in the position if there is one?
Good question. This is one of the things that is changing. So back in the day, 2012, everyone would be like, if you were at a job for more than like 2 years, like if you were there 5 years, it was like, oh my god, wow, you 5 years in. Um, and so it was just very common, and people would almost kind of get on you and say, like, you're being underpaid if you haven't changed your job in like the last 3 to 4 years. Also, the way that equity investing works, typically, you would. There's a financial incentive to move every 4 years because you get a large dump of salary of stock. After 4 years, all of that becomes yours. You get these refreshers, but if you keep doing that every 4 years, I know people were multimillionaires because they went to like four hot startups and then they all IPO'd and then they do nothing now. Um, so I think that, but I think that is going away. I think, right, we're seeing more people want these IC skills, this deep domain expertise that you've been in finance for a long period of time, you've been through a regulated industry, you've been in healthcare. So I don't think there's much of a penalization now in terms of applying to a role and having spent some time somewhere. Right now, is let's see. There's this adage in real estate too that like, when's the best time to buy real estate? Now. And the reason it's now is just because it's not that now is a good time, it's just that it'll probably be worse later. Like, prices tend to go up over time. There's a chance rates may go down, but they might go up. So, oftentimes when I say, "Is now a good time to look for a role?" Now is a time. There are roles. I'm not sure that in the future would be significantly worse, and I'm sorry, significantly better. And I think that looking for the role now, um, people are reporting 8 months to around 18 months a lot of times for role switch, and especially if you're senior-ish and you're trying to keep a senior level, a lot of people are running into issues because they're 30, a director making like 550K. Now, someone doesn't want to pay 550K to like a 32-year-old to spend like 2 companies, because there's the ex-VP of Google who launched Android who's like competing for that role or something. So anyways, I think because you don't know how long it's going to take, like to start now is always better. And then you can always adjust, even if you start light, and then you can kind of gauge whether it's okay, let me quit my job and full time, make this my full time job, or you're going to continue to invest in it over time.
Here we go. One more. Yeah. Which is, what would you suggest in the specific case of a person that has already had 20 plus years of experience, not only as a PM, and been laid off out of the blue and is now struggling to find a new job? So the long term employee who's now been laid off. What do you do? What do you
All right.
suggest?
One, if you are considering a shift, right, there are certain entry points typically. Let's say let me assume that you're not in tech and you're looking to move into tech. Certain roles make good entry points. Product management tends to be one because there's less of a we just don't have necessarily 30 years of history like we do with engineering. So it's easier to kind of come in and compete. One key way, especially another one is business operations. So if there's product operations, business operations, enterprise sales, or sales. We generally see sales skills tend to translate. But whatever you did for the last 20 years, if there is some aspect within the wide world of wherever you want to go, whether it be product or generally tech, that you can get alignment, that is by far the best strategy. If the last 20 years you were in pharmaceuticals, go into health tech. If the last 20 years you were in military, go into gov tech. If the last 20 years, again, if you invented Android, just start a new company. No, but yeah, but go into mobile, development at a competitor or something along those lines. So that's kind of what I really like to think, that there are things in your background that oftentimes people take for granted. Really go talk to people and understand what you have already that really is going to make you stand out, and build on top of that.
Fantastic. Well, we're at time, and we really appreciate your time, Damien. This is an amazing presentation. As always, you bring so much clarity to the issue about getting a job and managing through this era of layoffs. So thanks so much for the presentation today. And to everybody here, and thanks so much for coming. If you're interested in learning more about product, we'd love to have some of you apply. And we look forward to seeing many of you again in the future, another webinar like this one. We plan to do more.